Welcome to Games from Folktales, a podcast that mixes historical research and tabletop role-playing settings. I'm your host, Timothy Ferguson. Today, Ruminations on Ghosts. I'm sorry if there's more background noise in this recording than usual. I can't use my computer at the moment, so I'm recording this on my phone. Do you know where you are right now? A better question is, do you know how you know where you are right now? What's happening is that your body is providing haptic feedback to your brain. That is, you have a sensation of touch from the bottom of your feet, or if you're sitting down, tops of your legs. Your joints are also sending signals to your brain to tell your brain what configuration they're in, so you know where you are. You are within that bundle of sensations. Except if something's gone wrong, which is happening to me today. I woke up this morning with the distinct sensation that I was about 2 feet behind and 1 foot above where I physically am. This is either due to a pre-existing psychological condition or because of an inner ear infection. While I was lying there on my side, and I realized not on my back because that gave me the sensation that I was inside the mattress, which is particularly uncomfortable, not physically, psychologically, I thought about the tripart nature of the individual in Ars Magica. In Ars Magica, the person is made out of 3 parts: the physical body, the soul, and the energy that runs the body under the soul's direction. Now, animals don't have souls, but they do have this other energy, which is why it's sometimes called the animal spirit. The animal spirit is the part of the self that becomes the ghost if the person dies. So, what I'm experiencing at the moment is, from an Ars Magica perspective, a mild out-of-body experience. That is, I'm experiencing my personhood being separated from my physical body, if only by a couple of feet. This is an unusual sensation. It's quite fun, actually. It's been giving me some thoughts about how different things in Ars Magica work. So, in Ars Magica, spirits have to act through physical objects. All spiritual forces act through physical objects, even God. This is why each of the sacraments has a physical object attached to it. You are reconciled with God through the Mass, and that involves wine and bread, or actually, in the medieval period, just bread in many areas because the blood is within the body. Similarly, for marriage, rings are given and received. There's water in baptism, oil in ultimate unction. A physical object is necessary to carry the spiritual force. Similarly, when an elemental appears in Ars Magica, the elemental isn't made out of magical energy. The elemental is actually made out of fire or water or earth or air. The spiritual energy needs a physical force to allow it to interact with the real world. It doesn't have a soul, but it has a mystical spirit, which is taking the place of the animal spirits, which I mentioned before. When an elemental emerges in the world, it constructs itself a body out of nearby elemental matter. Demons are the same, actually. Demons don't bring their bodies with them from hell. They construct bodies for themselves out of the subtle moistures of the world. The viz they leave behind, the physical remnant after they're defeated, can't be something they've bought from them. It's something that they have tainted, or in the case of magical creatures, that they've purified and brought closer to the mystical realm by inhabiting it. In a sense, it's the presence of the animal spirit, the mystical energy, the ghost, that turns things into viz. Fairies do the same thing. When they anchor themselves into a physical object, they make it into viz by binding their spiritual energies into a physical object. At the moment, I'm having trouble touching things in a sort of reflexive, automatic way. I bopped myself in the nose while trying to eat breakfast this morning because my sensation of where the spoon was somewhat above where the spoon actually was. Usually it's fine so long as I'm getting strong feedback by pushing against objects, or when I can see my hands and feet, which is why I could start my phone. It's difficult to touch type, however, for example. This has given me some thoughts about when your character is using spells to control objects at a distance. Are you getting haptic feedback? I don't think you are, which must make it difficult to use some skills. For example, if you're lockpicking at a distance, can you feel the tumblers move? I realise in the medieval period we don't have tumblers, but It's just an example. When you're picking pockets using a spell that allows you to touch things at a distance, can you feel the coins? I really don't think you can. Perhaps you could through some sort of mentum requisite. What you're doing is a direct imposition of will on the universe by controlling an airy spirit. That's how all spellcasting works. You create temporary spirits. Now, I don't think the temporary spirits mind being temporary. I was thinking about ghosts today because of this, and in Ars Magica, ghosts have a final business which allows them to rest. Now, what does resting mean? Does the ghost go to heaven with the soul? I don't think it does. So that would mean that it just goes into the grave and it decays with the body. In Chinese folklore, that energy can sometimes cause the body to reanimate and become a vampire, or can animate nearby objects. No, wait a minute. No, the ghost probably does go with the soul, because on the final day, when the new earth is made, people believe that they are incarnate, that they're not pure souls in heaven in the medieval interpretation. People come back from the dead, but they come back from the dead in physical form. They're given new, pure bodies. The sea gives up its dead, etc., etc. So even there, the body would need to be controlled for the soul by something. And that would be the ghost. So the ghost doesn't rot away. It persists. It must persist in the grave, though, because it can't get into heaven. Because technically, nothing is in heaven except the saints. So it must reside in the grave. And this would explain why you can't contact people who have been given a church burial. If you haven't been given a church burial, your ghost is contactable because it's still within the mortal realm. Right, yes, I'm glad I worked that through. Generally, if I were using my proper recording equipment, I'd edit all this out. But for this one, I don't think I will. I will, however, jump in at this point, using my proper equipment later during the edit, to mention this explains one of the odd things in the Ars Magica game about the use of arcane connections. Most types of arcane connections stop working. However, if you find the bone of a dead person, it doesn't really matter how long they've been dead, you can still call up their ghost. Why does the arcane connection to that person not stop working? In the same way that a magus' hair or fingernails stop working as arcane connections. The answer is, I would argue, that ghosts are in some sense special. Ghosts are an eternal thing which are deliberately waiting until the end of time. That is, they are designed by the Creator not to wear out. They are permanent. Necromancers rejoice, God has done you a solid. What have we thought about today? Haptic feedback. Haptic feedback works differently in spells to, say, using a VR gauntlet. Your character, when controlling things at a distance, probably can't sense the surface texture of those things, for example. And at the moment, I'm technically having an out-of-body experience, so, my judgment may be slightly askew. It's quite a pleasant sensation. It doesn't so much make walking difficult as it makes balancing difficult, so I find that I kind of am running everywhere. Sometimes I even go wee, because I'm kind of gliding around. It's very strange. But I can see why certain people who want to have ecstatic visions take unpleasant chemicals to force themselves into this state. I'm not particularly feeling spiritually enlightened at this point, but there you go. There is a cult of Creaman Magi who have the ability to extricate themselves from the body and send the spirit out to roam around and do things. Again, it requires a physical body when it's actually interacting with the world. This is called the Fantasticum. And the Fantasticum is constructed out of ambient nearby matter. It happens to look like the body of the person because that's how the ghost imagines itself. However, there are cases where it doesn't look like the body of the person, and this is one of the explanations of werewolves. The ghost incarnates as the person's totemic animal. At the moment, I don't feel like a totemic animal. My favourite animal is technically the frog. I'm not feeling particularly Kermit at this point, although maybe I'll go and play my dulcimer. Sorry, I'm having a bit of an eccentric day. sense of self is absent in the Fantasticum. The body is asleep. I do apologise that this podcast is a lot less polished than the others. It's not scripted in advance, as you can probably tell. So, let's work that through. Personhood has 3 parts in Ars Magica: the body, the spirit, and the soul. Personhood of mystical creatures lacks the soul because the soul is an imprint specific to humans, granted by God, so that other magical creatures are a physical embodiment of animal spirits, which is the same as the human spirit. Even ghosts, when they are interacting with the real world, take on a temporary physicality, and by taking on a temporary physicality, they draw the material substance which they have taken on closer to their realm of power. By doing this, they embed that physical substance with viz. Spells which allow you to control things at a distance are done by puppeteering a mystic spirit, and that means that you likely don't have haptic feedback, which is what prevents you using skills at a distance, even with things like Rigo magic, although you may be able to work around that with skills that don't require direct haptic feedback, such as certain types of smithing where you're looking for particular colours to indicate levels of heat. So thank you for tuning in for one of the most unusual episodes of Games from Folktales. I hope the quality of the recording isn't too bad and that it's helped you think a little bit more deeply about how ghosts work in Mythic Europe.